Radha Radhe. Today is Saturday, 14th March 2026, and here we are to present to you this recap video for today's Bhagavad Gita study session. We continue along our journey, early stages of chapter 13, and of course, along with me, here is Mummy.
Radhe Radhe.
I'll bring up the slides and we'll take a look at the content covered today. We had the usual recap quiz first. That was to cover last week's content on chapter 13, verses 1, 2, 3, and 4. As always, if you look at the description for the video, you can see the link to the free community portal page, as well as other reference material which you can find. You'll get the quiz questions and much more for your progress. And then today we covered chapter 13, verse 5, an important verse attributing to great sages, but with very, very lengthy commentary. So great participation and reading by all the different participants. Let's take a look at what that essence there is.
ऋषिभिर्बहुधा गीतं छन्दोभिर्विविधैः पृथक् ब्रह्मसूत्रपदैश्चैव हेतुमद्भिर्विनिश्चितैः.
So, chapter 13, verse 5 has the catchphrase musical meadow. Some alliteration there building on from, field to meadow. It is musical because we see from Sri Krishna himself that he had earlier, remember, chapter 13, verse 2, he had given credit to the sages for being the ones to give the terminology of the field and the knower of the field. And so now in this chapter 13, verse 5, he gives a little bit more background, and Swamiji much, much more in the commentary. So it is great sages who have sung that truth. They've done it in many ways, manifold ways, and it's been in various Vedic hymns, especially it is in the Brahma Sutra, and all of it is with sound logic and conclusive evidence. So, as Swamiji presents to us in the commentary, and we talked at length in class, it is to make sure that we are getting our information and wisdom from authoritative sources, infallible sources, those who are correct, they don't make mistakes, which is why Sri Krishna stresses sound logic and conclusive evidence. Certainly, as we said in class, it's a nice use of the word sound here because it also has that musical connection. Here, of course, it's talking about being accurate and precise, being very logical. So Swamiji takes us through this tour of the different scriptures we discussed in the session. So Vedas, of course, we all are familiar with the four of them. We know that Vedvyas was not the writer of them, but the compiler of them or the divider of them, which is why Swamiji has used this word again, apaurushaya. They were not created by any person, they were manifested from the breath of God. Vedvyas for posterity, for generations like us to learn, he divided them into four to make it easier for us to learn at least some of that essence, have them documented forever. Vedas is that starting point there. Then we have Itihas. Itihas, we mostly do recognize two historical texts, the Ramayana, focusing on Lord Ram, the Mahabharata, focusing on Sri Krishna. And both of these are extremely long epics, very, very endearing. Many of you have watched them in different ways or read them in many places. Again, they are building up upon the great essence and nectar of all the wisdom that these dissensions and avatars of God presented to us. Mahabharata, of course, the longest poem, the longest epic in the world, 100,000 verses. And we all know that the Bhagavad Gita that we all are studying is embedded within that. Then Swamiji talks about the Puranas, 18 principal Puranas. You may have heard of some of them, such as Vishnu Puran, Shiv Puran, Skand Puran, etc. The most prominent is the Bhagavad Puran, which is also very commonly, fondly known as the Srimad Bhagavatam. We've often heard Swamiji say this, where the Bhagavad Gita ends, philosophically, the Srimad Bhagavatam picks up from there. And we all know that it is peppered with stories and leelas of pastimes of Sri Krishna, and of course, building it up to that true nectar, the sar, as they say, Gopi Geet, and so on. Shat Darshan, then, six different systems of philosophy. Again, as Mummy mentioned in class, similar sort of content at the broadest level, presented with different interpretations, presented by different sages or rishis, as, again, more conclusive evidence and information on the field and the knower of the field. These, again, we've seen some of them in an earlier chapter as well. We'll get to that momentarily. So after that, Swamiji then gets us to the Vedanta Darshan, the Brahma Sutra. And that is, in fact, the last word on the topic of distinction, Swamiji says, between the soul, the material body, that's the field, and God. Soul and God, remember, as the knowers of that field, the individual field of activities. We get a little bit of a summary also of the different philosophical systems by the original Jagat Gurus. Mommy had mentioned in class as well, Advaitvad, Dvaita Dvaitvad, etc. In English, you often hear of them as dualism, non-dualism, qualified non-dualism, and so on. All these are, again, talking about or giving explanation on God and us as individuals. Are we the same? Are we different? Are we parts of the whole? Are we similar? Etc. Remember, in Swamiji's premise from the beginning, throughout his discourses, throughout this holy Bhagavad Gita, and of course, coming from the wisdom and encouragement of Maharajji, it's always about Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. And as we see, in fact, in the last paragraph of Swamiji's commentary, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who in fact was a great source of inspiration and similarity for Sri Maharajji, he actually, out of respect, did not write such commentary on the Vedanta Darshan, the Brahma Sutra, because he said everything is there, it's perfect, nothing else is needed. As Mummy stressed to us in class, love for God, devotion, she'll talk more perhaps. All this is what we have been constantly learning and we keep on progressing towards. So let's hear from Mummy on her additions to this as well as any important Sanskrit words or phrases we should add to our dictionaries.
Mhm. Thank you, Gagan. Let's look at first two important words. One is Bahudha. Bahudha means in manifold ways. What does this mean? Sri Krishna himself is saying that great sages have sung through hymns, Vedic hymns. What is Vedic hymns? That is Chandobhihi. Chandobhihi. What have they sung? They have sung Vinishchitaihi with conclusive evidence. All the wisdom and knowledge that came from the breath of God. See, eh, all this wisdom and knowledge about this, what Krishna is teaching us in this chapter, Kshetra and Kshetragnya, okay, the field and the knower of the field, and the Param Kshetragnya, that means the supreme knower of the field. These are the three main entities that Sri Krishna is going to teach us. Now, all this knowledge is written in Vedas. Originally, this all came from the breath of God. Then it was uh, in descending knowledge, it was heard by Shruti. But for our benefit, Ved Vyas, great sage Ved Vyas, wrote it in Vedas. He divided the whole knowledge into four Vedas. And how all these spiritual principles, they are validated on the authority of the Vedas. And then we all know about history, itihas, which says talks about Ramayana and Mahabharata. Now we know that in Ramayana there are the poetry meter is chaupais, that is sung in a different way. In Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, which is embedded in Mahabharata, there are different chands, and we have learned those poetic meters, Tristub meter and Anustub meter. So these great sages have really sung that knowledge, that wisdom, which we need to understand about ourselves and about this universe. And everything is given in our scriptures with a very conclusive evidence. Basically, we need to just learn about all these different scriptures names. The main topic is absolute truth and what are our duties. There are some, this Mimamsa Darshan is about ritualistic duties and ceremonies. So these scriptures have been written for the system of logic, for understanding life and the absolute truth. And then we come to these Hindu philosophies, right? We have all heard about that there have been five great Jagat Gurus, and they have propounded different Hindu philosophies. So, first it was Adi Shankaracharya, who talked about the non dualistic philosophy. What is it? That is Advaitvad. Hmm? Advaitvad tradition of philosophy. So, what it meant that the individual soul, Atman, is identical to the ultimate reality, that is Brahman. And the material world is perceived as illusion or mithya. So, Adi Shankaracharya said that liberation or moksha is attained by realizing this oneness with God. And they use this Mahavakya. There is a great saying, Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art. Okay, it is in Chandogya Upanishad. Also, they use Aham Brahmasmi, that I am Brahman. So they say they believe in Nirgun Brahman, that is the divine without attributes. So that Advaitwad teaches that through intense self reflection, study, and meditation, the individual soul wakes up from the dream of mundane existence and becomes one with the eternal Brahman. And then came Dvaitvad. Dvaitvad was dualism, which says God and individual souls are distinct realities. They are not one. So Madhavacharya, he propounded this. And then came Nimbarkacharya's philosophy, that was Dvait Advaitvad. Now that is Bheda Abheda. This is dualistic non dualism. So it talked about individual soul and the world. They are simultaneously different from and identical to the Supreme Lord. So it emphasizes Radha Krishna devotion, moksha through self surrender and loving service. Okay, so he took the middle ground. And then came Ramanujacharya. He propounded the Vishisht Advaita Vedanta. That means qualified non dualism. He said Narayan, Brahman, is supreme and he possesses infinite auspicious attributes and he is Sagun Brahman and this universe is real. Soul and matter, they are forming the body of God. So everything is coming from the body of God. And he said moksha is achieved through loving devotion and surrender, bhakti and prapatti. And then came Vallabhacharya. He talked about Shuddha Advait Vad, that is pure non dualism. He said world and individual souls are real manifestations of the supreme deity Krishna. It favors devotion, bhakti. And it says that householder life is the main way to live life. And he talks about Samarpan and path of grace, selfless love for Sri Krishna. So he wrote Anubhashya. And he said no need of renunciation. So now here, this Bhagavad Gita, which we people have been following, written by Swami Mukundanandji, what he learned from Jagat Guru Kripaluji Maharaj, he was the great Samanvayacharya. Jagat Guru Samanvayacharya. Samanvayacharya means he reconciled all these philosophies, and that is why we have been learning here that we are individual soul, which is the fragment of that supreme soul. This individual soul is always hankering for happiness, which it tries to find in this world, but it never gets. And finally, through this knowledge and wisdom, we are able to learn that its happiness lies in attaching its mind to the Supreme Lord God. And that is why we are into true Radha Krishna Bhakti, so that we are in yog, in connection with, in union with God through bhakti, surrender, and loving devotion. Over to you, Gagan.
Thank you, Mummy. Yes, helpful summary there of all the different systems and schools of thought, and how, of course, everything then lands in the aggregate. And as that you mentioned, Samanvayacharya, from that reconciliation of everything by Sri Maharaj and then Swamiji presenting that to us truly as what our goal is, that whole thing about devotion, bhakti yoga, and love for God. Let's take a look at the flyer that we discussed in class and had some animated comments from people in the Zoom chat window. So thank you for that. Your first impressions, your next impressions, etc. Again, this was never intended to be, of course, a dragon or a snake, but some people did recognize it as that. So that's creative, that's interesting. But this is truly a manifold here in terms of a mathematical sense. But again, just using it in a different way as Sri Krishna has in the translation used manifold to represent various and diverse. We have these various fields here. They are diverse. You can see, of course, the musical notes all along. And the question is, if you were to sing on manifolds, or about manifolds, or in manifold ways, what would your origin and content be? Chapter 13, verse 5, the origin, we have seen Sri Krishna attributes it to the great sages who have sung that truth. And it's been sung in Vedic hymns. So we have the Vedas here, we have the Brahma Sutra, of course, several other places, all with sound, pun again, but sound logic, precise logic, and conclusive evidence. And of course, a little easy to overlook perhaps, we have these souls here. If you see these ones that are very light blue, white, floating around, these are, remember, the knowers of the field. They are also part of that absolute truth we all keep discussing. So the field of activities and the knower of the field of activities, the body, the soul, and of course the supreme one, of course, we have God. So if we sing on manifolds, we'll have it as the origin being the great sages, the Vedic hymns, the Brahma Sutra, and the content is the truth about the field and the knower of the field. So that's with regards to the flyer. Now, as a reminder, we had given some spontaneous homework in class. I'll try to summarize those requests as well. So your homework for today and this upcoming week is, first of all, we saw the Vedas. There are four of them listed here. We know all four: Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sam Veda, and Atharva Veda. Which one specifically is mentioned by Sri Krishna in a Bhagavad Gita verse? Let us know which chapter and verse it is and or the context. So that's the first one. Second is we look at Brahma Sutra. No, before that, we look at Shad Darshan. So these six different systems of philosophy, at least some of them, if not all, have been mentioned before as well by Swamiji in, I believe, somewhere in chapter 2. At least Nyaya Darshan is mentioned, and hint, he mentions it in the context of babies. So go ahead and find which verse of chapter 2 has that mention of Nyaya Darshan and or any of the other six Shad Darshan mentioned here. So that's the second homework question. Third homework question is with regards to Brahma Sutra. So we know it as the Vedanta Darshan. In its actual form, the name Brahma Sutra, Swamiji has actually presented this, mentioned it way, way early on in this holy Bhagavad Gita. In fact, in the introduction itself. So let us know which specific section he mentions that in. And again, with regards to which context he brings it. I'll give the hint 3. It's about something to do with 3. And again, it's very helpful to all of us as students of all of this material. So, as several of you did, we want to thank you, of course. I'll take a look. We'll take a look later at the comments, but some of you posted for last week's recap video your responses to the homework question that was from last time. Indeed, chapter 2, verse 17, I believe, is the one we were looking for that had the response to the question about flowers, fragrance, the soul, and consciousness. So, again, thank you for responding there. This time, again, in the comments for this recap video, you can go ahead and post your answers for these questions. There are 3 so far. There's a fourth one we'll give you. You can choose that as well. We talked about Itihas today, Ramayana, Mahabharat. Many of you are familiar, of course, with the very, very famous versions from the 80s and early 90s, Ramayana, Mahabharat. Just pick any of them and let us know a fond episode or a fond memory you have about it whenever you watched any of those two epics. And especially if you go back to the time when you watched them, could have been in the 80s, could have been in the 90s, maybe it's much later, but you may get reminded about a certain specific event, watching it together, etc. Some memory comes to mind. Tell us in the comments what that is. We then look forward to seeing you next time. That's going to be Saturday, 21st March 2026. Same 8 a.m. Central Time and the new India time with the time change. It's 6:30 p.m. India time. Thank you so much. Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, until then, keep thinking about Kshetra, Kshetragnya, and Param Kshetragnya. Kshetra means field, Kshetragya, field, knower of the field, and Param Kshetragnya, supreme knower of the all the fields. Let's take blessings from Radharani. Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Thank you all. Radhe Radhe.